to try to talk about tonight is something that might sound very scary, but it's also things that nobody's really telling any recruits or nobody's really telling anybody anything. So it's kind of interesting from my perspective to kind of go through this on the college side, but also then be part of recruiting visits and also talking to other coaches right now as well. Nobody's really talking about these things that I'm going to really mention. So it's kind of interesting, especially on it's been happening a lot on the male side for the longest time, but it's more prevalent now than ever on the female side too. But before we get started, I want to kind of go through how we're going to operate tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my recruiting story and how my college experience was real quick, and then we'll go through the presentation, and then I'll have Abby and Charlotte talk. So these two girls play for NLSA. I couldn't tell you how long they played for our club for because there's probably about 1,000 kids that I've been dealing with over the last 10 years, but I can honestly say that these are two of the best that have played for us on the girls' side. And both of them are going to be playing for the WPSL team this summer for us to come back, so it's kind of exciting. But I think both of them have a unique college outlook on what they wanted, especially the one that's closest to me. And she might be a little nervous to tell her story, but I think it's a really, really cool story that relates to a lot of today's players, especially the mental health part. So I'm going to go through this, specifically talking about just kind of the recruiting landscape and what people aren't really talking about to the recruits itself. So we're going to talk about how COVID has affected the landscape, give you guys some insight on the most important change and how the transfer portal now works in all of NCAA sports. Give you guys some insight on the silent threats that nobody's talking about, try to give you it from a college coaching perspective, and then talk to these two as well. And then just give you some overall advice on what I think you guys can take away from it and what it actually means. So these are the current stats. On the women's side, you have about 395,000 girls graduating every year playing high school soccer. 28,440 of them go on to play college soccer. 2.4 have a chance to play at Division I level. 1.9 chances of playing at the D2 level. And obviously, you have an uptick on the D3 level of 2.9. And then on the boys' side, you have a slightly higher number of fellows that are playing college, basically high school soccer and graduating. 25,499 of those boys play college soccer. And as you guys can see, on the boys' side, it's a really, really competitive market on the Division I side, Division II, and Division III. So when you look at that, you know, your chances of playing college soccer are very slim in general, right? And that should either motivate you or scare you, and whatever one you guys want to go with is totally fine. But for me, there are different ways to get into colleges and make yourself noticed, but it's really good to look at this every single year. Now, I think this is total bullcrap because of the way the landscape has changed from COVID, and also there's a huge influx of international kids that are in the market that isn't included in this number. So I actually think that the chances of you playing college soccer are less than what they have on the NCAA website. Just basically what I'm seeing. And here are the 5 things that are threatening your kid's chance of playing college soccer. The transfer portal, the COVID year, international influence, the coaching carousel, and just an understanding of roster sizes and what the makeup of the roster is. And I think if you guys have a really good, somebody telling you these things that are happening, when you guys go and look at the colleges over the next couple of years, you have opportunities to go to an ID clinic, or you have opportunities to go to unofficial and official visits, you might have some actual ammo and some better ideas of what to ask the coaches when you guys go and look at them, okay? So I'll give you an example. The transfer portal in general has changed so much over the last couple of years. And it's really, COVID has dictated what happens to the transfer portal and what has happened. I was recruited to play at Northeastern, pretty much happened very late. I was looking at Monmouth, and the Monmouth coach kind of was very hot and everything was going well, and then it just kind of dissipated. And that was the summer going into my junior year of high school, into the senior year of high school. So basically I got to July 15th before my senior year, and I was basically crapping my pants because I didn't really have the opportunity to go to Monmouth. So there was a kid that was my age, that's how competitive it is, that I played with growing up, that I still talk to regularly that was verbally committed to Rutgers and then turned around and ended up verbally committing to Monmouth before the signing day. And I later found out that basically the kid took my spot because I ended up playing for the ODP team for the Monmouth coach, and I basically crapped the bed that spring season, and he basically went after somebody else. So I started panicking, as kids usually do. I started having a lot of anxious moments, and essentially what happened was I ended up going to Northeastern through the guy that I actually played for the regional team for. After my sophomore year of college and going back to the transfer portal, last day of spring season, I struggled with injuries both fall. I basically had rolled ankles and got studded a lot, and basically was out for 8 weeks both in my freshman year and my sophomore year from ankle injuries. I was told on the last day of spring season that I was no longer going to play for Northeastern, which I kind of saw coming because every year when you're on scholarship, you have to sign a document every single February for the most part that you are going to come back. It's basically your signing day internally, and nobody really talks about it. And then so the way Northeastern works from a calendar perspective is they're on co-op trimesters. So we basically got done every year at the end of April. And I got kicked off maybe the week before the school was ending. So you can tell another interesting moment for me in having to deal with that. And when I was going into school, basically the steps were you had to go to your compliance officer in at whatever school you're at in the athletic office. They then had to fill out a bunch of paperwork, and then the coach had to approve it. So a coach, if they're being a real prick, if they don't like you or if something's not going wrong, they didn't have to sign that paperwork, right? But lucky enough, I was able to get released and be able to be eligible elsewhere. But the biggest difference is now kids can just put themselves in the portal, especially in the Division I level. So they don't have to go to their head coach. Their head coach no longer has to approve it. They just have to go to the compliance department, and all they have to do is say, I want to enter the transfer portal, right? And there's nothing the head coach can do about it. So I'll give you a couple of examples that I've seen on what the changes have been, okay? The first one, this year's John Hopkins team, if anybody watched them win the national title on the girls' side of Division III, 8 of the 10 of the starting players that were on the field, not the goalkeeper, but the girls that were playing the field, 8 of 10 of them there were Division I transfers that were looking to go get their whatever graduate programs. So the team this year was pretty much a Division I soccer team, right? And based on the conversations that I had at convention over the past weekend, I was told that was the best Division III college team that was ever put together, ever. And that is a result of what the transfer portal has become. And the second point is also going to kind of explore that. So if we think about it, right, and the COVID year, which is the next slide, is kind of the epitome of it. But a lot of these kids now, if they're medical redshirting, if they just get regular redshirted, it depends on what they're doing at school. So if they get to the point where they can graduate from college, I'll take TCNJ as an example, there's not a lot of graduate programs that might interest them. So then they have to look elsewhere while they still have a year of eligibility. Okay? A coach nowadays is going to look at the transfer portal very, very seriously as part of the recruiting process. Because as a coach, your job is to win. Unfortunately, it's your livelihood. If you're not doing well, and a coach will go to the college coaching carousel. But essentially, if I am a college coach, what's going to be the best interest of my job, right, is to look at somebody that's been playing college soccer for 3 or 4 years, that has played in NCAA tournament games or has played in conference games, has been part of a Division I program, especially at the Division III level, where you might have an excellent MBA program, you have great graduate in physical therapy, that type of thing, right? That could become part of your recruiting DNA. Right, you look at the transfer portal, okay? And then the other side of it that I'm starting to see too is, let's say, for example, you go to Monmouth University and you become the Conference Player of the Year in the CAA, all right? Or, better yet, you go to TCNJ and you become the NJAC Player of the Year. There's nothing to say that you can't put yourself in the transfer portal, and a college coach is going to take you seriously because you were voted Conference Player of the Year. So you're some shifts in now in how kids are approaching it too. They might not have the opportunity to go play, let's say at a Big Ten school right away, but if they go play at a smaller school, they end up being first team all conference, they can then utilize that as a resume builder, and now they can go to a Big Ten school and say, hey, look what I did, are you interested in it? All right, so it's really interesting time to be part of college athletics in general, and the negatives and positives, but whatever way you kind of want to see it, they're trying to empower student athletes, and they've taken a lot of power away from coaches, and now coaches have to do a much better job of focusing their collegiate programs on culture, on mental health, right, and the happiness of the student athlete, okay? As, kind of went through this already, I guess, huh? Pretty much, right? Good. Second point, going to the COVID year. So when COVID was going down, that was basically March of 2020, I think it was, right? And then fall of 2020, nobody was playing, no sports. And then spring was kind of up in the air depending on what conference you're in. So the NCAA basically made up the idea that kids that were in school at that point could then have a COVID year if they really wanted to. So they were basically implementing you could have a free year after you were done with your school if you wanted to take it and if you didn't want to, right? The only league that I know of that hasn't done that was the Ivy League. So, you know, our friends over at Princeton University are very much up against the wall with a lot of that stuff, but I do think that has been lifted for those kids. So basically, this is what we were talking about before, the conference is in charge of it. You know, but most conferences are part of the NCAA, so they're going to abide by whatever the NCAA says. But as well, if a player is academically eligible, there's not a lot of colleges in the United States of America, or institutions in general, that have the ability to offer programs for these kids after they academically are eligible to graduate. And it's not like you can just say, like, hey, you know, I want to stick around another year, because if you have enough credits to graduate, then you have to graduate. It's not like you can stick around and continue to just take classes. So a lot of these kids, and I'm in it right now, we have a class that is juniors and seniors. Those kids still have an additional year. So the way we have to look at it and the way we have to communicate is basically we have to figure out on a yearly basis for 2 more cycles if those kids are going to want to come back or not. And for the majority of the time, at TCNJ, because we haven't been that fantastic recently, those kids just want to go into the regular working world and make money. You know, that's the type of institution that we are. It's a highly academic and competitive institution. But there's a lot of kids that are still playing, right? So for example, in the NJAC this year, just from personal experience coaching against them, Rutgers Camden, Chris's alma mater, they had about 4 or 5 kids that they brought in for graduate degrees. And it was really tough to play against them because you have these veteran kids that have played in really, really important games in the conference level, as well as NCAA tournaments, Division I's, Division II's, transferring in. And now you have our kids playing against those kids that are a lot more talented and so forth. So you have to think about this over the next couple of years, especially if you're a junior or a senior. Keep this in the back of your mind. Ask the coach, you know, how are you guys handling the COVID years, right? Is it impacting your roster? Because if you think about it, all right, if you have a roster of 28 kids right now on your college team and you know that you have, let's say 16 of those are COVID years, okay? Theoretically, a coach is sitting in their office with their assistant coach and they're going, normally if there wasn't this, they'd go, we have to replace 2 classes of 8. Right, but then now the conversation is who's coming back from those 2 classes of 8, which means that they only have to recruit 6 kids, which means now the recruiting market is more competitive for the kids coming out of high school. And again, right, if you think about it, who does the coach want to be around? Or who's the coach going to trust a little bit more? The kid that has been in their program for 3 or 4 years and understands how it works, or more of a freshman that's going to have to mature a little bit going into their freshman year of college. All right? And right now that's the graduating classes of 2023 and 2024 are those that are affected. So we'll have 2 more years where that soccer pool is inflated and it kind of makes it more competitive for players such as yourselves that are looking at playing in college. And it brings the number of recruits down that they really have to look at. Another one that nobody talks about, and I'm sure Hannah Marino saw this because she got to play Division II, international influence. And it was very prevalent when I was in college at the Division I level. I think when I went to Northeastern, we had 6 kids that were internationals. We had 3 kids from Norway, 2 kids from Iceland, a kid from Germany, a kid from Egypt. And coaches utilize this, right? Like Charlie Inverso just retired from Ryder. If you look at the roster that he has, it's like 50 to 75% kids that are not from this country. Which is not to say that's not a bad thing, but there are schools and there are institutions and there are coaches that have connections because they know that there's probably more mature players than American players right now, because you're getting an American kid at 19 and you might be getting that college kid at 22. And there's a grown difference in the 22-year-old versus the 18-year-old. I can tell you right now, an 18-year-old Brian Thompson going to freshman year at Northeastern was not ready to play against a 25-year-old German. It's really not, like, nobody prepares you for that stuff. Nobody prepares you to play against men, right? So it's really important. You'll see it on the Division I side, on the men's side a lot. You'll see if you look at the rosters, but the one thing that I've been paying attention to over the last 4 or 5 years is actually the improvement in how many players on the Division I side of the women's side is getting international students, right? Look at Florida State's roster. Even UNC, look at their roster. They used to be mostly American kids, but now there's an international influence. So again, another piece of the puzzle that is taking away opportunities for American kids to go to college, right? If there's an improvement in that mindset, right? Division II is huge, right? I mean, I can think of 2 schools off the top of my head that I know of that I played against in college that I see now that are just strictly international kids. Okay? Seton Hall women's soccer. You look at their roster right now, all internationals. Franklin Pierce, all internationals. It's huge, right? And they know that they're going to get grown, mature adults that have been living in an adult world for a couple of years that maybe weren't good enough to play professionally, but they're probably all in academies, and they probably all have gone through it, and they understand how to play in important games, and they've been living on their own for a little while. And there's a maturity aspect. I do think that at the Division III level, there is a minimal impact. When I kind of just peruse rosters from time to time to kind of see it, but like NJAC schools we really don't recruit internationally. TCNJ, we've been lucky to have a couple over the years, but it's mostly just by luck because the kid wants to be here, and you can sell it because they're in between the city. We're in between Philadelphia and New York City, and we're in Princeton, so it's a very big mindset for a lot of kids to come over here. And especially on the girls' side, I don't see it as much now. So you'll see a lot of international kids at the Division II and the Division III level. And again, going back to the point, what are the things that are threatening the players that are getting recruited right now from being roster spots on rosters are things that we don't really think about on a daily basis. So the next slide is the coaching carousel, right? So there's a lot of things that people don't really think about coaches. So the number one thing that I always say to people that think about playing college soccer, when you find the campus that you fall in love with and you can be there, okay, and if you have a career-ending injury, or if your coach gets fired, are you going to be happy there if soccer is not a part of your life? Because that's truly important. You know, and nobody really talks about that type of stuff, right? Every year, and you're seeing it so much more now at the Division I level, there's so much impatience, right? And I mean, TCNJ women's soccer is a perfect example, right? They gave the lady that just resigned 1 year. Not even 1 year. She was there, she hired March 1st, and she was let go on December 1st. So the pressure that these coaches are under on a yearly basis to get it right, and if they don't get it right, parents are going straight to the AD, or kids are going straight to HR, and vice versa, and a coach can get fired like that. Where 15 years ago, I'll give you an example, my Northeastern team was at ODU, and you guys are not going to believe this story, but it's 100% true. ODU, and I was just getting back from injury. We were down at ODU, we're playing in downpouring rain. And for us as a bunch of players, we thought it was really cool because we're 0-0 at ODU. It's like, it's like Brentford going and play against Arsenal and stealing a point, right? Or going on the road in the EPL and stealing a point. And when you're halftime at ODU and your coach comes in, he takes a whiteboard and he throws it across the room and almost hits everybody, it kind of puts it into perspective. That's something you get fired for today. 15 years ago, nobody had the balls to say anything to the AD, right? So there's a lot more influence of the players and the parents in today's world, in our world too, but also in the college athletics world. Coaches get promoted, coaches get hired, but I think the key for me is when you are looking at a school, look at their resume. How long have they been there for? That's the number one question that I would look at first. And if they've been there for 15 years, then that's great, because you know that they've embedded themselves in the community, you know that they've embedded themselves into the program. That means that they didn't really have that much desire to go get that next job, right? If a guy or a girl has been there for 2 years, right? Where were they beforehand? Is this their first head coaching job? When you go and talk to those people, are you asking them, hey, what's your ambition as a coach? What are your goals? Right? Are you going to be here for a long time? And I guarantee 100% of us will say, yeah, we're here for the long haul. But in reality, that's not really the case. Okay? Like, for example, any moment, I can pick up and leave, right? But, I've embedded myself in the community. I've been here for 5 years. And it's not really going to, I've been at TCNJ now. There's a lot of things that make me think that I'm going to be here for the long haul. Right? But there are new coaches. I have a friend of mine that coaches at a school in PA at the D3 level. And he just got the job 2 years ago. He's won the conference 2 years in a row. All right, so now the other side of it too is he's got perspective behind him. He's got the resume. So if somebody wants to go after him, they could, and that's something you have to think about as well. Are they using this job to get their next job? Have they jumped around? Okay, have they only been an assistant coach? If you've just been an assistant coach and you got hired in your first head coaching job, right? Look at how that program is done before he was there or she was there. And then look at what they did in their first year. Because if a program is done, let's say they're 4-12, and then they go 8-8 the next year, and the second year they go maybe 12-6. Well, they're now building their resume that they could leave at some point. So it's really important to have these conversations with the coaches. And at the Division III level, and the Division I level, it just depends. You'll see coaches that, let's say you're at a Marist, right, and you do really well, and you end up putting a conference 3 years in a row. You're probably putting your resume into probably 4 or 5 jobs that are a little bit of a higher conference than you are. At the Division III level, if you're playing in a certain conference that's a little bit on the lighter side, that's got smaller schools, well, maybe you take a shot at a big school when you see a job open up. So it's really important to have coaching conversations. At the Division III level, I know for a fact there's constant changes on the assistant coaching side too. So you want to make sure that when you are getting recruited, make sure you are communicating with the right person. Because a lot of times they give their assistant coaches responsibilities, but then that guy or girl might not be there in 2 years' time because they might get a head coaching job. Right? So make sure you guys have the pivotal conversations with the head coach at any of those levels. And the number one thing I always say is ask them if they have a family, because it's really hard, especially for me now. Like, I can't ever see myself moving because I can't move away from my in-laws. Can't do that to my wife, right? So those are the things you have to ask them, because it will tell you a lot about who they are and what they value. Look at the roster size and makeup, and it really depends on if it's a state school, a private institution, or there's for us at TCNJ, we have 28 roster spots that we can give, but then you look at, let's say Montclair State or Rowan, or schools that are a little bit more public than ours, they're taking 35 to 40 kids, right? So when you're a freshman going into that, and you're looking at that, make sure you look at everything that is on the website. Where are those people from, of the 35 to 40? are they playing club soccer? Right? Because that will tell you everything you need to know about what the coach is looking for, or who they go after, or what they're looking at. And then look at the statistics and see how many freshmen they're playing. Okay? There's still a lot of people that won't play underclassmen, or they have a really, really good senior class, or they have a heavy junior class, so they go a little bit heavier on that side when they go on their play. And look at that stuff and really think about it. If you are okay being a number in year 1 and year 2, and you want to use it as a development tool and help you kind of get into the school a little bit, and then also kind of get the lay of the land, and then by junior and senior year you want to be impactful, that's great. But I guarantee you guys all, once you start the recruiting process and people start making you feel loved, and people start making you feel special, all right, they're going to lead you down a path because they want you at the school, and then you get there, and I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a dog-eat-dog world, right? Who is going to help you win, okay? And Abby might be able to talk about that a little bit. I'm sure Hannah gets to talk about that a lot. It happens to me too, right? As players, you guys got to understand, just because you're going to the school doesn't mean you're going to play. And a lot of us struggle with that concept right now because we're kind of, I was talking to Chris before, we did a really good, there was a really good classroom session at the convention this past weekend where they talked a lot about how the parenting role has changed from the 1980s until now. And back then there wasn't as many resources, and kids really didn't have social media, and that has made things instant in terms of information. So the kids can go and get information without the parents now, and the parents are spending more money than ever before on new sports. So then the parents kind of put in the mindset there's an ROI into it, right? And it's tough, right? It's really, really tough today to look at youth sports and go, is it getting better or worse? And you never know. Okay, it could be getting better, it could be getting more defined, right? And the last important thing is, when you guys go on your recruiting trips or you go look at certain schools or you go on tours, you know, it's really important to talk to the coaches about where does athletics fall in terms of the admissions process, right? I can tell you at TCNJ, they removed the athletic program. School will do just fine, right? And then other schools, it's a huge pivotal part of, I think King's College is a good example. I talked to that coach recently, and basically said, like, we use this, like, we have a certain amount of spots that we really have to fill the school with, they're expecting us to. And the athletics is such an important part of the community. So ask them, you know, am I just a number? Or try to figure out the psychological part of the admissions process. Is it part of the financial success of the institution, right? And their mission statement, okay? And see if all those things align with you psychologically. So these two are here with us tonight. We have Abby Brown and Charlotte Hare. Abby is a current freshman at York College, PA. She plays on she kind of, I convinced her to play for the Real Central New Jersey WSL team this past summer, and she was kind of really important on her run at the very end. She'll be a full-time member this year. I really don't remember how many teams you've been on, so I just put 03 or 04 alum. She's a summer camp staff member, so whenever we have overnight camps here, I usually call Abby because she's really good at it. She went to Doc Mennonite, and she was also what's the PSCS? Is that Pennsylvania Catholic School Association? So she was an all-state selection last year, let's put it that way. And then next to her you have Charlotte Hare. Charlotte's going to be attending Dickinson University. She's been playing for Real Central for the past 2 summers. Again, I don't know how many teams she was really involved with, I can't remember, so she's an 0203 alum. And then she's also a summer staff member. She was kind of been helping with our YDP program and a ton of things over the past couple of years. She's a Hopewell Valley High School alum, and she's a CBC Player of the Year, or senior year of high school. So Abby is going to tell her college story a little bit, and then Charlotte's going to tell her college story, and I'll let them kind of speak a little bit. All right, so Abby, why don't you go first, because Charlotte's probably really nervous.
All right. My college story isn't too terribly interesting. It probably started, I think, 8th grade, maybe freshman year. I started kind of looking. So like if I would go to a tournament in Dillsburg, I would look at York and Messiah because they were right next to it. Not that I would go and talk to the coach or normally when you go to a tournament, there's going to be a big list of all the college coaches that are showing up. So if you're interested in that college and you're like, oh look, that has my major, I'm interested there, or I like that school. I don't know why, but I like that school. Email them. You know what I mean? Send an email and just give them your schedule. They'll probably watch about 10 minutes of your game and decide, oh, I want to see them again, or oh, I'm not interested, and they won't email you back. But that's how it's going to work. So if you email 5, you'll be lucky probably to get 2 or 3. But that was kind of how that played out. So I emailed a ton of colleges my freshman year, and a lot of them came to games, and they can't really interact with you as much your freshman year because you're just a freshman. They kind of have to wait until your sophomore, junior year. My sophomore year of high school got completely nixed by COVID, which was probably one of our best NLSA teams that got, cut off. But so that ended up happening, and so that full spring basically, I was just sending out the link to my sports recruiter, being like, look, this is how I play, this is who I am, and luckily they could watch that and get a better glimpse of who I was as a player. And then my junior year, we finally were back, and that's when I also started connecting even more and more. By my, I think end of junior year, I narrowed it down to 4 colleges that I was really, really interested in. Whether it be that they gave me they said I had a roster spot if I wanted it or not. I had 4 that I really, really liked. By my senior year, I had made a decision, I think, by October. And yeah, that's pretty much how mine ended up. My now coach pulled me into their office, and I did a few ID clinics with the ones that I really liked over the summer. But they pulled me into their office, and they're like, here's a roster spot if you want it. I was like, can I think? And I left with my mom and ended up emailing probably 2 weeks after, being like, yeah, I'll take that spot. And so that's kind of how mine was much, I think, more relaxed than Charlotte's probably, but that's pretty much how mine ended up.
Did you learn any lessons
Oh,
from the recruiting process, or what's one big takeaway?
I wish I started on academic scholarships much earlier than I decided to. Because when you hit senior year and you're stressed about just being a senior and probably doing too much, even though you don't want to, or you have senioritis and you just want to be gone, you're not going to want to do those scholarships. So start early. So maybe you get a $100 one your freshman year, and then you kind of keep racking them up. But yeah, that's probably the biggest one.
All right. Sure.
Okay. My story is kind of long and really interesting, so just bear with me. So I graduated in 2020, which was the year that COVID hit. I originally was committed to go to Salisbury University in Maryland, D3 school. Honestly, I had no idea what I wanted in school. I kind of didn't really love the idea of going away to college, being away from my family. I kind of just kept pushing it away, and I can honestly say now that I picked this school just for soccer and not because of the school, and I think that's really important. You have to make sure, like Brian said, that you really like the school, because what if soccer is taken away from you? And that my freshman year, soccer was taken away from me because of COVID. Our season got canceled, I think a week before we were supposed to go for preseason. So I was basically on campus, stuck there in my room. All my classes were online. I couldn't really make any friends because you were limited to how many people you could be around or have in your dorm. So I really struggled. With my mental health, and especially because I was in an uncomfortable situation, a new environment, away from my family. I didn't really know how to handle everything. So it was really challenging. And the one thing I loved and one thing I went to school for was soccer, and it was taken away. So I really had to take a step back was still like enrolled in Salisbury, but everything was online because of COVID. I was planning on returning for the spring semester, but didn't work out. I wasn't ready yet, so I stayed home. All my classes were online again. I finished the year out there, and I knew that I wasn't gonna return to Salisbury. It just wasn't the right fit for me. I didn't love the school. I realized that I was such a homebody. And before going to college, I was like, I want to go away. Like, I'm getting out of here. I need a new environment. But I realized that I'm such a homebody. I love being close. I love being able to drive within like 2 hours back here. So I realized that I didn't want to go back, and I kind of had to start all over again. This time it was different for me because I really had to figure out what I wanted in a school before soccer came. And I still had no idea. I was very immature, and I just didn't really know what my priorities were. I didn't really know what I wanted to major in. I knew that I wanted a small school to just better for me with like classroom sizes and everything and learning. So I decided to attend Mercer County Community College. I went there. I reached out to the coach for soccer, and I just practiced with them because I didn't want to use my eligibility to play in games just because I want to use that when I would transfer to a 4-year school. So I played with them for when I had their practices. I went to all their games and everything. It was really good to be a part of a team like that because I hadn't had that in a while because of COVID. So it was really fun to be around them. And then I was there for a year and a half. I just finished my last semester at Mercer in the winter, and this last semester was really my eye-opening experience because I really figured out what I wanted in a school. I wanted a small liberal arts school. I wanted to be close to home, and I actually picked Dickinson because my brother just graduated from there, and my dad also went there. And honestly, when my brother went there, I was like, I will never go here. I hate it. I could never see myself here. But honestly, and my brother played baseball there, and same with my dad. So I was there a lot in the spring, and I really got the feel of the whole community and just like the small atmosphere, and I really loved it. And I was like, you know what, this is where I want to be. And my parents are really involved in the college community. They run like a major for data analytics there, so they're really involved. They're always there, and I was like, I love that because they're going to be here. They're come see me all the time, and I was like, this is really where I want to be, and I think I need to be. And it took me long to figure out, but I wouldn't change my experience for anything because I think it's made me mature, and really I figured out that I need to put myself first and my needs before anything, and I need to like speak up for my feelings even though it's uncomfortable. I really need to express those. Yeah, that's my story.
I mean, I can honestly say, standing here, like, these two I'm extremely proud of them because they were both procrastinators.
Yeah.
And procrastinators come off as immature, and there's social anxiety, and there's anxiousness that goes along with that, and there's the pressure of everybody telling them, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, right? And I distinctly remember, especially me and Charlotte, I had to beg her. Can I say this?
Yeah.
I sat down with her, I had to beg her to write emails to college coaches. Because if you got to see her play, I mean, it's special. And she doesn't get a chance to play Division I soccer, but she could, right? But maybe that's not what she wanted, okay? So the question I've always asked her the whole entire time is, what's your brain telling you? What's your heart telling you, right? And I feel very much aligned with her because, you know, I've been around her like a very long time now, and I was in an experience where I went with my head both times in my decision to go to college and where I went to college, and I never followed my heart. And that's a huge regret of mine. The other one is a procrastinator, but I'm really proud of her because at the end of the day, she went to the school she wanted to be at, all right? And you can see it, like when these girls talk about, the difference between when Charlotte told me she went to Salisbury versus when she called me and told me she was going to Dickinson, there's a difference in her voice, right? And Abby got to see, Abby told me what her decision was, and then I got to talk to her college coach. Seemed like a great fit. But that doesn't always happen, right? You know, and these are two unique stories that are relevant today. And I think the most important thing you can take away from this is both of these kids went through those COVID years. Like they were in high school at a pivotal point in their recruiting process, and it got taken away from them. All right? So there's two different stories, but they both are talented players. And it just goes to show you, talent doesn't equal Division I, it doesn't equal Division II, it doesn't equal Division III. Does anybody have any questions for them before I go to my final slide? Any questions? Do you have any questions for them? That might entice another question? Huh? I guess my question to you guys is like, did you feel like the club helped you guys at all along the way in your recruiting process? Do you feel like you were supported? And as a high school player, looking back now, this is something I look back as a 32-year-old guy, did I take advantage of the opportunities that I should have taken advantage of? What do you guys think?
Well, I would say you were my biggest help.
Biggest fan too.
Biggest fan too.
Number one supporter. No, Brian, literally we'd have private training sessions, and before we would go, we'd bring our computers and we would sit in a classroom and just send out emails to coaches who were going to be at our showcase runs that weekend. And if you didn't do that, honestly, I don't know if I'd be playing college. Like,
Somebody would have found you, but
yeah, but honestly, Brian was my biggest supporter and he helped me out like, the whole time. I mean, the club was a great experience, and like everyone around us was great.
what about you, Abby?
The club, it sure helped me. I mean, I play back at home for a club nobody's ever heard of that really doesn't go to big showcases or anything of the sorts. So playing for a club like this, we were able to go to like college showcases, and I was actually able to be seen by coaches. And then on top of that, like Brian's connected me with the program in the summer, the WPSL. Like honestly, if I didn't play that this summer, I don't really think I would have got any minutes in my freshman year of college, because my coach came to one of my games in the summer for the WPSL, saw me play outside back. I've always been a like midfielder, and saw me play outside back, and that's where I played my entire first year of college.
And for those of you guys that know me, you know that I really just say what I want to these kids. So, for example, that game, she was playing attacking midfielder, and her dad loves texting her in the middle of the game, like, what are you doing, right? But I say the same exact thing to her, and she comes off, and I basically said, it was the first time she played with us at that level, and I've seen her play a ton. I know she's talented, and Charlotte was out there too, when we went out to PA Classics. We ended up losing 1-0. Abby comes off the field, and as I subbed her off, she was sucking it up. As she comes off the field, I said, can you play like you deserve to be here, right? And as soon as that happened, a coach, if you're technically good enough, you can figure out how to play. You can put a kid anywhere on the field if they're technically good enough. You can teach a kid how to play right back that's the center attacking mid. So I've done this actually with Charlotte too, right? Charlotte was struggling the first year in the Real Central program. I didn't think she was doing well in the midfield, but I was like, you know what? This kid, every time the ball is at her feet, she doesn't lose it. Her first touch is excellent. I'm just going to put her at outside back, right? And then we have a different threat because now she can attack. And the same thing with that. And for those of you guys that are in high school now, you went through your freshman year, whoever had a varsity experience, it's tough getting on the field at the varsity level, isn't it? All right, it's really tough. Except for you two guys, you probably run the show, right? Okay, but it's tough. And it's going to be even tougher when you get to college. And if you can have the mindset of, I am not an attacking midfielder, and I want to get on the field, you'll have an opportunity to play. Right? And if coach says, can you play outside back, your answer always should be yes, and I've never played that before. Right? Because you'll never get on the field if that's your attitude. I'm telling you that right now. So these two are very talented, I think, and they're two of the most talented girls that have come out of the club since I've been here. I don't know if they've been the most talented kids that have come out of here. I mean, Hannah was very talented as well. Her club team was awesome. So we have talented kids that come through the program all the time. You you guys have any questions for them before I go to the next slide?
I have
Yes.
a quick question. So there's ID camps that are specific to a school.
Yeah.
It's just that school versus the ones that have like 15 schools. What are your thoughts? Like, are the ones that have 15 schools at once, are they worth it?
I've went to both personally, and like I think the only time one that has like 15 is worth it is if like 3 of your schools that you like are going there or something. Like I wouldn't go if you're like, oh, there's only like one school there. I would mainly go to their like more, just their school's one. Because I've gone to like just the York ones, and I've also gone to a bigger one. Trust me, ID clinics are not where you get recruited. Going to like showcases and tournaments are definitely more where. But if you are interested and you show up to those, it shows the coach that you're also interested. So that was a big part that helped me.
Charlotte, you ever gone to an ID clinic?
I hate ID. I hate them.
It's
Oh
like a
my
tryout
gosh.
all over again.
Yeah. I agree with Abby. I don't think that's where you're gonna get recruited. I mean, I do think they matter if you're already talking to a school and they're like, hey, come out to our ID clinic. Like that would be great to see you play in a different environment. That's what I did for Dickinson. I was already talking to the coach and he was like, can you come out to our ID camp? Because he's never seen me play, he's only seen me film, and that's where he made the offer to me after that.
So typically what colleges are doing now is, you know, if they invite you to an ID clinic or you register for an ID clinic, there's either 2 ways that they're utilizing it. Half of the colleges, I would say, if you get personally invited to it, what that typically means is you're one of like 30 juniors that's on their list. And a lot of coaches that I talk to, especially at the Division III level, are utilizing that, and they're telling you to come out, and like that's your tryout essentially, right? Half of the ones are still using it as fundraisers for their program. You know, not everybody has a full-time assistant coach. Not everybody has enough money to get kids gear that like all these Big Ten schools walk around with, and the Power 5 schools walk around with. A lot of times it is, but then it's a really good tool for them because it's depends how they wrap it up, right? So like they could do it on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock before they play at 6 p.m. So what their expectation is you're there from 10 to 4, and they're hoping you stay and walk around campus. Hopefully there's a campus tour involved, and then you get to watch the game. Those matter because that means you're probably a group, you're part of a group that they're recruiting and looking at, and they're seeing how you guys are doing in an environment where they can just watch it. You know, like you talk to a coach at a showcase, right? Most of them have a list of kids that are sitting there and they're watching your kid for about 15 minutes. If your kid gets subbed off the field, they turn around and watch the other game, or they're watching the rest of the game. All right, but there's a lot of positive and negatives to it. I would stay away from the big 500 one. What's that one?
I'll have one.
Yeah, Coach Chris has got a really good.
I'm not going to drop any names. I don't like to talk because this is Brian. So I'll say NLSA University. NLSA University ID Clinic is probably a good one, right? Brian Thompson Soccer Academy Camp.com. Maybe stay away from that one.
What the heck, man?
I work for you, so.
I think it's a good soccer school, you know.
There's 2 sides to it. There's one making aspect to it, and then there's the personalized on campus, maybe there with other recruits in your pool. Look at those.
I'll give you a name never to go to. Don't ever go to the exact sports camps. Those things suck. And it sucks for the coaches too, because all you have to do is sit there and write afterwards, like evaluations that they just get sent to you and then nothing ever happens.
Future 500 is another one that's
Future 500 is tough.
it's like it's a grueling couple days, and I think the level of soccer is pretty good, but it's pretty sporadic.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're going to get correctly identified this, because it's no different than a showcase with 14 teams.
I'd say the majority of the recruiting experience that you're going to have over the next 5 years or so is going to be a coach sees you play after they've been contacted by your son or daughter, right? And they're going to send their assistant coach to come watch you play, or they're going to go watch you play. It depends on the level of the school and who the recruiting coordinator is. They like you. They'll send you an email. We'd like to set up a chance to come visit the school. So they might do an individual one, or they might. It depends on what year you are at that point, whether you're a junior or senior, or even a sophomore. They might send you information about ID camps, because they're only allowed to talk to you about the recruiting process and about the admissions process until after your June 15th of your sophomore year going into junior year. So it's interesting. A UJ, if you come to our ID clinic, we've recruited 5 kids over the last 2 years. After the last, we ran 2. We ran one in the spring of 2021 and one in fall 2022, maybe August. 5 kids from each have come to our school, so we utilize it a lot. So 5 kids came to on our roster right now from each of the last 2 classes that come from recruiting camps. But we've also made a push too, to go out and watch high school games. Like I'm very lucky because I get to watch a lot of these kids in the area on a weekly basis. So like I have a list of names that I keep throughout the year that I like. And then once we go, we're like probably one of those schools that goes and watches high school games nowadays too, because of our club specials and all that. So, did you ever go to an ID clinic? You went to Dickinson one, and that was it.
No, I went to High Point.
Oof, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was on your mom, right?
And I went to, all of them were my mom.
Yeah.
Love her for making me go to them. They're brutal. And I went to St. Joe's.
And kids, have the difficult conversation with your mom and dad. You don't want to go to a school and go visit the school, and you don't want to go to an ID clinic. Tell them, and give them the why. Right? Tell them you hate campus, or tell them whatever. Don't do things to make them happy. Because at the end of the day, most parents, and I have to say this now because I'm a parent, all you do is care about your kids' happiness. You just want them to be happy. You want them to be in a spot where they're going to flourish, right? Okay? So make sure you have the hard conversations with your mom and dads about exactly what you are looking for. And you're like, no, I don't want that. But when they're begging you, when they're bugging you to do the things that Coach Chris is going to ask you to do on January 30th, you got to do those things, right? You got to make your recruiting list. You got to figure out what you're looking for. Because if college is going to be part of your life experience, then you heard it here first. If you put it off, there's going to be some adversity thrown your way that you're going to have to solve. And at the end, you figure out exactly what you want, but it's earlier to figure that out early. All right, so I think that's the next step for us, is if we're going to try to start doing this on a yearly basis where we talk about a certain topic that's important and relevant, bring some alumni up. Hopefully we have a couple more new ones next year. And then post that, Chris is going to start going through with you guys exactly what you're going to do. So we have a freshman, sophomore, and then a junior and senior. By this time right now for the seniors, it's maybe a little bit too late to get recruited, but it's never too late if somebody really, really wants to. I'll tell you that right now for a fact. Oh no. Okay. So these are the 7 pieces of advice that I have before you guys leave. With anything in life, you get out of it what you put into it. If you're not going to put effort into it, right, then you're not going to get anything out of it. Okay? We don't live in a world right now where, and this used to be the case, where you are on the New Jersey State ODP team 15 years ago and you went to the Region 1 tournament and then a coach sent you a letter. Recruiting's changed. It's changed completely. Now, the athlete's got to be empowered to send an email and say, hey, I'm interested in your school. Because there's so many kids that want to play college soccer compared to what it was like 15 years ago. All right, so if you are somebody that is a goal of yours, you got to make sure you put the work in. You got to make sure you're reaching out to schools prior to going to showcases. Right? You got to make sure you're communicating with the coaches, answering emails back to them, setting up phone calls. Okay, I had a convention this past weekend. My goal was to talk to 20 coaches that I've never talked to before in the college landscape. I wanted to shake hands with 20 people, introduce myself as somebody that ran a club that I think has pretty talented individuals in it, so that we can continue to expand our network. And every single one of them said they're going to always answer emails from a student that expresses interest in their program. They might not like you, but they're always going to respond to you. All right? Because that's the first step. Second one, use the resources you have to your advantage. Too many people are scared to talk to me about anything, really. Right? So, especially this, like I'm in it. I feel it. I've helped kids get into schools. I've talked to college coaches. I've talked to a lot more coaches in the last 3 years about kids in our program than a lot of people think. And just because people don't see it and I don't advertise it doesn't mean it's not happening, right? So there's certain goals. Like one thing right now coming out of COVID, we're finally in a spot where we're kind of out of COVID. My number one goal is how do we help these U15 and U19 players get better exposure, right? So I'm sitting and thinking and expressing ideas of how we can be unique for our customers, right? For our players, for our families. You have resources that are online, right? Sports recruits. Some of our teams are teetering with Athlete Match a little bit to see if that's a better fit for us, right? But use those, okay? Go on there. You guys have Instagram, you got Snapchat. What else is there these days, ladies? What else we got? Come on, give me some. Twitch, Pinterest, huh? Snapchat. What's the big one now? With the dances and all that stuff. TikTok. Now, see, I'm getting old because I don't even know what it is, right? But Reels, whatever it is. You guys use that on a daily basis. It's technology that you should be owning and loving because you can do it yourself and all you gotta do is put like a little bit of time into it. Okay? Create your profile, make it look good, sell yourself. Because you're gonna have to sell yourself the rest of your life. To get a job, you gotta sell yourself. You gotta go, you gotta build a great resume, a great cover letter, you gotta go, hopefully you got some connections that can get you an interview, and then you gotta sell yourself in the interview. Right? You gotta learn how to sell yourself now as a young adult, as crazy and as scary as that sounds. Understand what coaches are looking for. Okay? And that's really important to me. When you guys go and look at their websites, make sure you're looking at the rosters and understanding where those kids are from. Okay? For example, there's a school in Pennsylvania. Whole school's from Pennsylvania. So as a New Jersey player, it might be tough for you to go there. Because then you're dealing with all people from Pennsylvania, which is not the worst thing in the world. I've lived in Pennsylvania for 3 years, so I get it, right? But you got to understand, where do they recruit? Abby's also from Pennsylvania. I didn't mean that as a diss, but like, you have to understand where they're recruiting from, right? And you have to also look at the classes. Do your homework on the roster. Do you understand what your potential class might look like, right? So, who here is going to graduate in 2023? Are you guys sophomores, 2024s?
Yeah.
So you guys have to look at the juniors of this year on the roster for them, or the upcoming year, right? Look at the roster and see how many juniors do they have? And if they have, let's say 10 juniors, then they're gonna have to bring in a class of at least 10. Does that make sense? So look at that and understand that. Then finally, look at the coach, right? Where are they from in general? Are they from New Jersey? Are they from Pennsylvania? Are they from out of the country? Are they from, this, that, or whatever? And that'll tell you a lot about where they're probably going to recruit. Because if a guy's from New Jersey, where's all his connections? Most likely New Jersey. If somebody is English accent, got a college job, then they're probably utilizing a ton of different resources to get what they need, right? If there's a college coach that's in Pennsylvania that is from New Jersey, then they're probably going to look at kids from New Jersey because they know the landscape and they know what the kids from New Jersey can bring. Do your homework on what you want, okay? And I know that sounds scary as a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, okay? But think about everything on a daily basis. You guys make decisions about what you want every single day. What do you want to eat? Where do you want to go to high school, right? Who do you want to date? Okay? Who do you want to take to prom? Okay? All those decisions, you're making decisions on a daily basis. You know what you want, right? So figure that out. If you go to a huge Group 4 school and you feel really good in that environment, then you probably are going to do well in a big school. But if you go to a small school, it's got 1,000 students, it's a Group 1 school or a prep institution, and it's smaller and it's more defined, you're probably going to be more comfortable in a smaller school. All right, so think about that. Think about how far do I want to be away from home? All right? Think about, do I want to be on a plane? Do I want to be able to drive? Do I want to stay in New Jersey? Do I want to, what is the circumference of where you want to go? And have the honest conversation with your parent if you want to go to California and they won't want you to go to California. All right? Or have the conversation with your parents about what the financial part of it's going to look like too. Because those are things that kids don't talk to the parents about, but it's really important. If the push comes to shove, there's probably some limitations. Like for me, when I was transferring out of school, my parents had the hard conversation with me that they would cover a certain amount of money. And that certain amount of money was basically what they were paying at Northeastern. Right? So it's not like I could just transfer out and go to a really, really cool D3 school it costs $50,000 a year. Like I had like a list of, then my mom was like, nope, 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 definitely not, hell no, no way. And what was left was all public school, right? But I was happy with the choice that I made. If you want to play college soccer, I am of the opinion in today's landscape that you should never put a label on what level you want to play at. Because at the end of the day, when you're 32 years old, it's not going to freaking matter, right? Like I'm standing at a convention, you stand at a lot of bars, just so everybody knows. Standing at a bar in the Marriott, and you look around the room. You got Alexi Lala standing here. You got Eddie Pope standing here. You got Heather O'Reilly standing over here. You got, I don't know who else was in there. Kyle Martino was sitting somewhere. You got the president of the United States Soccer Association. And you got me standing in the same bar as them. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what level you play. We all are here to play soccer and love soccer and grow the game, right? So don't put a label on, I want to play Division I soccer. Because I think you'll be very, very disappointed. Because once you reach, if that's what your goal is, that's great, right? But I'll give you my personal example is, I was that guy. I was a D1 or bust guy. But I was also playing in an environment where there was one PDA team. And it meant something to play at PDA, track down. Or it meant something to play at match field. Because there was only one team. And the college coaches would line the fields. We'd be playing in front of 100 people when we were going to these showcases. Because we were one of, right, the best teams in the country at the time. Okay? Nowadays, it's like, the landscape's so crazy right now that it's like, you know, you gotta sell people about all these different things, and it's just like, be happy that you're one of the 6% of kids that are playing college soccer. You know what I mean? Because that's not a lot of kids out of the 400,000, the 450,000 are gonna go play. So don't put a stipulation of, I wanna play Division I soccer. Because I'll tell you what, there is a lot of good kids that play Division III soccer. And they get to play against Division I kids every single summer. And there's not that big of a difference. Right? When TCNJ boys, we go play against Monmouth this spring, it's not going to be like a 7-0 game. It's going to be like a 2-1 game or a 3-2 game. It's not that vast of a difference. Give your best with every opportunity. I had a huge conversation with our 2009 group yesterday about how, probably shouldn't have said this out loud, but I thought they walk around the field very entitled. Entitled that they can go, like, entitled that they're going to go win a game. Entitled that they get playing time. Entitled that it's just going to happen. But that's not how really what it works, right? You look at any of the elite athletes on the planet, and you talk about what they're doing in terms of their work ethic, right? And you see a lot of this now on Instagram with Reels or Facebook Reels. There's plenty of motivational stuff out there right now, and little clips that are good. And the best ones are the Kobe Bryant ones. Because all Kobe talks about is what it meant to be elite. And it's giving your best every day and what, always pushing the players around you. And if you're not capable of giving your best every day, then you got to think about it. Did I really deserve to play college soccer to get to go? You know what I mean? And last, show maturity through good communication skills. As you can tell, I was a speech kid when I was growing up. So show maturity. Show maturity through good communication. Can you not put that? Yeah, let's delete that part. Right? But regardless, this is something you guys can work on every single day. All right? And those of you guys that play for me know that I can be a little bit of a sometimes. But if you can talk to me, you can talk to anybody. If you feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me about something, you should feel comfortable talking to a college coach. Right? That's the environment I want to put you in as a player. You got to understand that if you're too scared to talk to your coach, you're never going to talk to a college coach. Which means you're probably too scared to even go give your best every day. Which means you don't really deserve to go play at the next level. Right? So work on your communication skills now. Okay? Have those brave conversations. Okay? Show a little bit of grit in how you want to go about your life. Alright? Because if you don't talk to people, you'll never really know what's going on or how they feel or what you can do better or what's holding you back a little bit from their point of view. Alright? The players that are in this room, who controls your playing time? that's the thing you gotta realize. If you are on the field, right, for example, if you're on the field and you don't go in for a tackle, you're off. And if I'm doing that, then your high school coach is probably gonna do that, and your college coach is gonna do that, right? And you gotta think about it too. If, for example, if me or Chris are having a conversation with a college coach, do we think we're lying to them about you guys, or do you think we're pretty transparent about your strengths and your weaknesses? Pretty transparent, right? Like, I had to talk to the Dickinson coach for Charlotte, and of course I sold the crap out of her because I love her to death, right? But I did talk about her weaknesses, okay? Like, for example, here's a little tidbit. The first year at RC&J, me and Coach Ben had to beg Charlotte to do the safe sport, to sign up on Team Snap, to do all of the things. And then this past summer, who was the first person to register? Boom. Who was the first person to sign up and do our safe sport? Boom. If that doesn't tell you, I mean, it's like a small example, right? Granular micro example, but that doesn't tell you about how a year has changed that kid. It tells me everything I need to know. She wanted to sign up, right? She got it done. There was time management involved. That's pretty much it. Do you guys have any other questions before we leave tonight? So the next step would be on January 30th, he'll be doing basically class by class virtual sessions. All of those sessions will be recorded, so if you do miss it, we'll figure out how to communicate it out to everybody. But my expectation is if you're a freshman, jump on it. If you're a sophomore, jump on it. If you're a junior or senior, jump on it. All right, this is going to be probably the boring one, I would imagine, right? It's a lot of information, but it's information you guys need to know about. Recruiting calendars, right? What you can and cannot do, what coaches can and cannot do, right? What should you be doing? Like, what are best practices at each of the different grades? And what should you be doing as a freshman right now? So prepare yourself so you're not behind the 8 ball, right? We're finalizing a college coaches panel. We don't know if we're gonna do it virtual or in person yet, just because of how all of our schedules are, and and we're trying to do the best we possibly can on behalf of everybody. But our goal is to try to get a D1 coach, D2 coach, D3 coach. So that way you guys get a little bit of it. And my goal with that is for them to go through what they look for in a player. So that you guys can hear directly from a college coaches of what they are recruiting. So that when you hear me say the same thing, you're not just saying that, you're not just looking at me and rolling your eyes. Okay, because there's a lot of similarities in what we're teaching here, or what I do and what Coach Chris does at his group, and a lot of our high school age groups go through, that are very similar to what we are trying to prepare you for. Right? So, culture, work ethic. Okay? What happens when there's adversity? Alright, do you end up shying away, or do you work to overcome it? Alright, what do you do when things are going wrong? What are you doing when things are going right? How do you respond to scenarios? How's your communication skills? Right? Everything I just talked about, does that have anything to do with the tactical side of the game? No. Okay? Because I'll tell you right now, a college coach, if they want you on your squad, the last thing they want is, they don't want 2 things to happen. They don't want to get sued, that's number 1. And they don't want to get fired because they took you on and you did something stupid at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's realistically the world that they live in. All right? Yes, they want to win championships, but they got to make sure that they are taking care of things. Like, for example, it's not really fun when you get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning from one of the kids saying, this kid did something stupid, right? Or this girl did something dumb, okay? And then you have to handle the consequences of it. And that's a direct reflection of you as a coach in the program that you're running. All right? And then last but not least, we're trying to finalize some type of college ID opportunity. So I've been talking to, that was the biggest thing I was talking to college coaches about this weekend is, what can we do better as a club to help them come see our players that we can do internally and not just like go to an EDP showcase. I think the stuff that the girls are going to go to coming up, the mainline friendlies for some of our teams, that's a really good test for us to see if that's something we add to the calendar for all of our high school age teams. And then maybe see if that's something that we can try to do as well and partner with a lot of those kids, those coaches as well, and try to form better relationships with those guys. And we're really trying, guys. We're trying to make, coming out of COVID, it's more important than ever to make sure that we are helping you guys with whatever you need. So don't be scared to email me, right? And don't be scared to text me. Don't be scared to call. I might not always pick up because right now I'm in the middle of an important fencing season. But keep emailing, right? Keep texting, keep calling. Okay, most of us are here to help, but you got to realize that you are the one that needs to go do all the work. Right, Chuck? Any other thoughts from anybody? Any questions at all before they leave? Nice, thanks for coming. I appreciate the audience.